you're back with Miss O'Kaylee, and we're going to continue our reading of Love That Dog by Sharon Creech to celebrate Poetry Month. Last week, what we started off was with our new character, Jack, and he goes to school in Miss Stretchberry's room, and she's doing a poetry unit, and he decides he does not like poetry. Poetry's for girls. He can't write it. It's boring. He hates it. But I think in just the first few pages of this book, we discovered that Jack is actually a pretty good poet. So he thinks he's bad at it, but he's not really. Just probably like most of you. Anybody who's afraid of poetry, it's just in your head. You're not actually bad at it. Everybody's a good poet. So we're going to start off on November 6th, and it's just right after Jack had decided that it was okay for his teacher to put a poem on the board, but he's really shy about it and decides it's fine to put it up there, but don't put my name on it. So it's kind of where we left off and where we're starting today. So November 6th. They look nice typed up like that on blue paper on a yellow board, but still, don't tell anyone who wrote them, okay? And what does anonymous mean? Is it good? Is anonymous a good thing? Do you know what anonymous means? It means that whoever wrote it is really shy and doesn't want anybody to know who they are. So instead of putting their name on it, they say anonymous. November 9th. I don't have any pets, so I can't write about one, and especially I can't write a poem about one. November 15th. Yes, I used to have a pet. I don't want to write about it. You're going to ask me why not, right? November 22nd. Pretend I still have a pet? Can't I make up a pet, a different one, like a tiger or a hamster, a goldfish, turtle, snail, worm, flea? November 29th. I like those small poems we read today. When they're small like that, you can read a whole bunch in a short time, and then in your head are all the pictures of all the small things from all the small poems. I liked how the kitten leaped in the cat poem, and how you could see the long head of the horse in the horse poem. And especially I liked the dog in the dog poem, because that's just how my yellow dog used to lie down, with his tongue all limp and his chin between his paws, and how he'd sometimes chomp at a fly, and then sleep in his loose skin, just like that poet Miss Valerie Worth says in her small poems about dogs. December 4th. Why do you want to type up what I wrote about reading the small poems? It's not a poem, is it? I guess you can put it on the board if you want to, but don't put my name on it in case other people think it's not a poem. December 13th. I guess it does look like a poem when you see it typed up like that, but I think maybe it would look better if there was more space between the lines, like how I wrote it the first time. And I liked the picture of the yellow dog you put beside it, but that's not how my yellow dog looked. So that's the end for today. Jack mentions something in this section that I think is really important. He's just writing his thoughts down, and his teacher wants to put them on the board and show everybody them like they're a poem, and he says they're not a poem, it's just thoughts. But then he sees them on the board and is like, oh, it does look like a poem. So it's just more proof that even though we feel unconfident about our poetry sometimes, if you make something look like a poem, like what he's writing, these are just his thoughts, but it looks like a poem, and so it reads like a poem, and it's actually pretty good ones. Something else I think is interesting that he's doing is when, let's see if I can make you see this, when he writes things like the small poem, he puts it in really tiny font so that you know as a reader you're supposed to say small really quietly. He does it right here too. He makes it look really small when he writes the word small, so that you know that you're supposed to whisper. So when we write our poems, we should think about those things. We should think about, does it look like a poem instead of does it look like a paragraph? And can we make letters big and small and all over the place so that your reader reads it differently than they would read just a regular paragraph? Because Jack is really good at that, even though he doesn't think he's writing poems. All right, so for this week, my challenge to you is that you write a poem about a pet. And he wanted to write about a different pet than his pet, and so I think that's okay. So write a poem. It can be a long poem, it can be a short poem, it can be a poem that rhymes, it doesn't have to rhyme, it can be anything you want it to be about a pet. Maybe it's about a pet you have right now and you just love, or maybe it's about a pet you used to have and you don't have anymore, or about a pet you wish you had, or maybe even imaginary pet. So write a poem about what it would be like to have a dragon as your pet. Anything about a pet. Below is a link to a pet poem I wrote. I used to have a chicken. I grew up on a ranch, and I don't know if you know what raccoons do to small birds, but they eat them. I mean, they kill them. It's horrible. So we used to have a chicken coop, and behind it there was a duck pen. And one summer, a raccoon got into our chicken coop and it ate all the chickens except for one. And this chicken we named Chuck the chicken duck because he decided the raccoons don't eat the ducks, so I better become a duck instead of a chicken, and I'm going to stay safe. And he really would. I have pictures of him. There's like a row of ducks walking down our yard, and then there's a chicken following along behind. Or chickens can't swim, they drown. So we had a little pond, it was a pool that the ducks would swim in, and the chicken, Chuck, would like sit on the edge and watch them swim because he couldn't get in. One time he did try, and the ducks had to push him out because he almost drowned. But he completely convinced himself, even after we got chickens, that he was a duck, so we called him Chuck the chicken duck, and that's what I wrote my pet poem on. So read it, enjoy it, write one of your own, share it with me in the comments. I hope that Poetry Month is going awesome for you guys.